Welcome to our review on the nitrogen cycle. So when we're thinking about nitrogen, we're thinking about a chemical that's very important to living things. And the reason that nitrogen is important to our living things is because we need it to be able to make DNA and to make amino acids. And those amino acids are important because we need amino acids to make proteins. What we find though is that even though we've got 78% of the air that we breathe in every single day is nitrogen, we can't actually use that. We can only use nitrogen in the form of compounds like nitrates. When we're thinking about these nitrates then, we find them in our soil and they're dissolved in water at that point. Once the nitrates have been dissolved by water, then they're able to be taken up by the roots of our plant. Once they're in the plant, those nitrates are used to build proteins and then the plant grows. And then as animals eat our plants, it passes that nitrogen through the food chain. So what we then find at the end of this life cycle, when either the plant or the animal dies, then those nitrogen compounds found within them are then going to be broken down back into nitrates by decomposers. And that means they're then returned to the soil and then the cycle restarts once more. One of the most important things about the nitrogen cycle that allows it to work are different types of bacteria that are present. Now, the first type of bacteria we need to concern ourselves with are the decomposers, and they return nitrates back to the soil in one of two ways. First way is using the animal waste, urea and feces that obviously animals produce. Then they're going to break those down and convert them into ammonia, which is then released. Alternatively, when the animals and plants die, then the process of decay will occur and the proteins are broken down, again releasing ammonia. So the decomposers basically are going to generate ammonia for us. Another type of bacteria that's important here are the ones called the nitrifying bacteria. Now, the nitrifying bacteria take the ammonia and convert it into nitrates, which are then present in the soil so the plants can take them up. We also have another group called denitrifying bacteria, and what they do is they're actually going to break down nitrates to release nitrogen back into the air. So they're kind of the unhelpful ones of our little chain, if you like. So the decomposers make ammonia from the dead animals or the waste material that they produce, and the nitrifying bacteria will convert the ammonia into the nitrates, and those nitrates go back into our plants. So what we've got here then is just a little diagram to summarise this whole thing. So we start off with nitrogen in the air. Remember, nitrogen is 78% of all of the air in our atmosphere. Then our nitrogen fixing bacteria in our plants are going to convert that nitrogen into the nitrates. The plants take up those nitrates, then they become part of the plant itself. Plants will use the nitrates to make the proteins. Those get eaten by animals, they become animal proteins. When the plant or the animals die, then we will see this process of decay as a result of our decomposers, which are bacteria and fungi, and as a result of that, they will generate ammonia. Just like any of the excretion materials that our animals are producing will also be broken down into ammonia by our decomposing organisms. What we then see is that ammonia is going to be converted into nitrates through the action of the nitrifying bacteria, and then those nitrates will be absorbed by our plants once more. So what we actually find is you've got a nice little loop there that takes us round. The only other thing we need to concern ourselves with is the denitrifying bacteria, which, as you can see, take the nitrates and convert them back into nitrogen in our air. What we find is there are three different ways that we can actually get nitrogen gas into the soil. The first way is through the action of lightning. When we have lightning, then we've got enough energy there to cause nitrogen in our air to react with the oxygen and therefore make nitrates. So that's our first way. Second way is through the action of the nitrogen fixing bacteria, and these are bacteria that we tend to find in the roots of leguminous plants, so things like clover and peas for example. And what they do is they combine nitrogen with oxygen to make nitrates once more. The third and final way is through a human interaction, where we use the Haber process to make ammonia. And obviously that then means that we can generate any number of fertilizers from that, which we can return to the soil.